Claudette Charney is the head coach of the Hillsdale College women's basketball team, and what a distinguished tenure that she has had. She has become the longest tenured and winningest coach in GLIAC women's basketball history. She is in the top 10 all-time in Division II coaching wins, over 500 for her career. And she is going to be featuring, along with her team and coaches, a basketball camp coming up soon. Coach, tell us all about the camp.
Well, we're having a skills camp June 27th through the 29th, and it's at Hillsdale Academy. Our current gym is going through a major renovation, so we're very excited about that. So the Academy has been nice enough to allow us to piggyback the men's and the boys' camp, so we're going right after them. And it's 1st through 4th grade from 9 to noon, and 5th through 8th grade from 1 to 4. We have plenty of spots available. Please just let us know, and we'll be happy to even register you at the door.
Just girls, boys and girls? What are you?
Just girls,
okay,
for the most part. The boys' camp is right before us, the few days before us. So.
Because I was reading this on the air the other day, and I wasn't sure if it specified, because my son would like to go to every camp that was possible.
Well, we would let him. We would certainly let him come in. We will allow boys to come in, but we just didn't want to take the boys away from the boys' camp.
Totally understandable, but your kids ran a little clinic after the Upward season was over, and my boys had a blast at that day. You guys do a great job working with the young kids. Why is that important to what you're trying to do?
Well, I think it's important for us to be role models and our players to understand that this is where they started, and how important is it for a youngster to see a real good college player, spend some time and work with them, and it's just an exciting time for a young player coming up, when they're young and they're excited about the game, and they can meet the girls and have fun with it, and they're great people, and so they do a great job, teaching our youngsters what the game is all about, which is more than just bouncing the basketball.
A lot more to it than that. You look back at your incredible career in this conference, top 10 all time in the GLIAC, over 500 career victories. And it just seems to be the steadiness that you bring to your teams. I was looking back at your record from last year. You finished 11 and 14 on the season. And some people might say, well, that's one of our worst seasons. I think in some respects it was one of your best coaching years. When you look at the adversity and the number of players that were hurt on your team, your teams do not make excuses. You just go play, and they play really hard, and you won some games that nobody thought you could win. How do you have the discipline and the patience and the strength on your teams to be able to carry through what was a season where just about everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and yet at the end of the day you're just 3 games under 500? Well,
in the beginning of the year we knew we were going to have a young team, and we were excited about that, and we were looking forward to the season, and we have been blessed that we have not had a tremendous number of injuries, and for whatever reason, it was just seemed to be one of those years where, we would recover from one and then get another, and Marissa DeMott tore ACL last year, came back really strong, and then got a stress fracture and missed the last half of the year, and as a junior, we were looking forward to having her play, and then Abby Lovett tore ACL in the summer, so we didn't have her the entire year. She was a rising sophomore who did a great job her freshman year. So we were looking forward to all the athleticism and the younger players stepping forward and taking on new roles. And then, on the other hand, we started slow. We started at 1-8 in the conference. We played the brutal part of the schedule early on, and then we had the injuries, one right after another. And then our team kind of regrouped, I think, and they just kind of fell forward and fought for, working hard and doing the little things. And then we would, have a good play happen and have a good thing happen. And then it started to look like we were getting better. And then we finished the season. I think we finished the season 7-5 in the conference. And we did a tremendous job, I thought, with the talent that we had, because we had a lot of inexperienced players playing. We started 2 freshmen. We had a sophomore, Brooke Borowski, who had not played last year, missed the year of last year, her freshman year, with an injury, and she did a great job starting at Michigan Tech when we were up there. We had to go to the UP. That's difficult. We played Grand Valley Ferris early when they were playing really well. That was difficult, and we only have 4 non-conference games during the year, so 22 of those games are conference games. So it's a tough grind, and we kind of ground it through and got through it and got better at the end of the year. And, I think with our banquet at the end of the year, we kind of set a tone that we were going to really get after it this summer, and hopefully people will, see us in a different light next year. And with a few additions, we should be okay.
Brooke Borowski is not afraid to hoist it.
No.
You have some players that will shoot the basketball. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Megan Fote anchoring the middle, and she kind of had a breakout year, especially early on in the season. That characteristic of your teams, to that word grind, that just keep playing, to not give up on each other. Mm-hmm. As a fan of sports, men's and women's sports at the professional level and the amateur level, it just doesn't always happen. A lot of times when things start to go south, you can see teams just implode, and your teams don't do that. That team last year didn't do it. And it goes back to something Coach Otter always tells me. Whenever I ask him about, how tough it is to recruit these great students and all that stuff, he says, Andy, it's a blessing. It's actually a good thing. The kids that we bring in here make my job easier. And I wonder if that played into what you experienced last year. I
think it does, because I think they have the discipline to work hard in the classroom. They have to come in as very good students, very disciplined, time management. Their big adjustment is to the college game, going from high school to college, and then being confident enough in understanding that they're counted on to basically perform and produce. And I think at the college level, it's probably the biggest difference, the physicality of the game and the expectation of production. You have to produce when you're on the floor. And we have a very close-knit team. They are the nicest team I've ever seen in terms of their relations with each other and caring for each other and backing each other up and taking care of little things that have to happen, that happen during the year. And we almost are nice to a fault sometimes, because I think they have to learn that they have to get after it with each other in order to make each other better. And sometimes in practice, we had to get after them to do that. But all in all, I think we're going to be very athletic. Megan, obviously, is a very good player. And, she leads our team in team GPA. I think her GPA is a 3.8. And so she's a tremendous role model and a tremendous example of what a Hillsdale College student-athlete really is all about.
Claudette Charney is the head basketball coach at Hillsdale College. Her camp is coming up Thursday, June 27th through Saturday, June 29th at the Hillsdale Academy. And you can go online, hillsdale.edu. /athletics. They have a link for camps to get more information. Is there a phone number that we can give out, or are we doing this all online?
We can give out a phone number of 607-3152. Okay. And that will get you to John Mock, our assistant, who's in charge of
John's back?
Yeah.
Well, welcome back, John.
Yeah. Yep, he's back with Anya and Amber, and
it's going to be fun.
About that, yep.
What about the popularity of women's basketball? Yesterday's New York Times, I don't know if you read it, but there was an article featuring Val Ackerman, who's the former president of the NCAA basketball for women. She also is the former president of the WNBA. And the story talks about the fact that scoring is down in women's basketball, attendance is down in women's. We're talking about the Division I level right now.
Yep.
And she's leading a group that is trying to find ways to increase the popularity of the sport. Before I kind of bounce a few of these ideas off you, do you think this is a problem or not?
I do think it's a problem. I think we've reached a stagnant stage. I think there was excitement, with the UConns of the world and Tennessee and Notre Dame and some of the great programs, Stanford, that you see on television. I think we've reached a stagnant point with our game. I think something does need to change, because the men's game is dunking and excitement and athleticism, and the women's game is as John Wooden said, much more of a skilled game. You see passing, screening, you see the team involvement. Well, that's not, it's not as fun type of entertainment, I think, when you're watching it on television. So we don't have the attendance that the men's side does. So Val Ackerman is extremely intelligent when it comes to having a vision for the women's basketball game itself, and and we listened to a report that she gave at the WBCA convention, which is our Coaches Association, and the white paper that she developed just came out. It's on ncaa.org if anyone's interested in reading it. And I think the changes, there has to be some change. There are some changes that I think she's looking at and suggested for the Division I level that, obviously will be implemented and filtering down.
If the change happens at D1, does that affect Division II, or are you sort of an autonomous league apart from Division I?
No, I think it'll affect anything. It'll affect women's college basketball as a whole.
Okay.
Our rules are the women's rules. They're not Division I rules, Division II rules, Division III rules.
Right.
So our college basketball rules are encompassing all of the divisions, including NAIA. And so, when you're talking about adding a 10-second backcourt, you're talking about the possibility of cutting the shot clock down to 24 seconds. They want to make the game more exciting because there's not enough scoring. And
I want to go through a couple of these one at a time, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just because I was so interested in this article. I've been doing your games for a long time, and I love the sport.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't at the beginning. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'll get a chance to do the women. Maybe someday I'll get to do the men. Like I saw it as sort of I'm not going to lie about that.
Oh, yeah.
It was sort of a stepping stone for me. And what I found out was, when I got to cover a Katie Czat and a Chelsea Harrison and a Megan Fote, you really get to watch these teams, and you get just as into those games as you do the men's games.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the best games I've ever done are your games.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of have to give it a chance. And I think there is a misconception about women's basketball that, and it's not just me, a lot of the people that come to the games faithfully from the community are men who love to watch basketball, and they come to both games, and they really get into it. A couple of the ideas, I thought the biggest, most shocking one to me, and I wanted to throw this so you can just dismiss it right away or tell me what you think about it. Apparently, Coach Aramena has for a couple of years now been suggesting lowering the rim either to 9 feet or 9.5 feet. A lot of purists just out of hand reject the idea, saying that it would suggest that the women's play a lesser game. Ackerman says, I don't think we should uniformly dismiss anything. We should consider everything before we dismiss it. Do you see any scenario where the rim gets lowered?
At this point, I don't. I think there'll probably be some other changes happen before that particular change. I mean, they want to see, again, the excitement of the game, so you don't have to have a 6'8", women's basketball post player dunking. You could have a 6'1" player dunking a little bit more. That's the idea of the excitement that he suggests, with lowering of the rim. Something that's gone away, and we see the shots from the arc all the time, something that's gone away, going back a little bit to the camp and the skills portion of the game, is true shooting a jump shot, true shooting form has really gone away, along with passing. I think those things are either not taught as much, or we kind of skip, I think, over the fact that you have to become a pretty good shooter in order to shoot it, further and further and further away. So the arc has become a big part of the game. Lowering it to 9 feet, I just don't see that happening right now. I think just for the simple fact that, we've had a 30-second shot clock and a 10-foot rim forever in the college game. Possible high school changes with going to a shot clock, that might happen. But I think what we're trying to do is regain some of the notoriety and the exposure that we're missing, the attendance. I think you need to make the games, it is entertainment. So you need to make the games either less expensive, promote them more, whatever. I think that there's a lot of ideas floating around there, but I do think we need to see some change.
Val talks a lot about sites, like potentially having the women's Final Four the same weekend as the men's Final Four, and kind of piggybacking with that event, which is wildly popular. Talking about maybe establishing like a home city for the tournament every year instead of moving it all over the place. She has a lot of ideas about the site. Specific to the game, what about going to a 24-second shot clock? That's one of the things that she's discussing. Would you be in favor of doing that, and what would that do to the game? I think
I would. We've had a 30-second shot clock, while the men have had a 35-second shot clock, which I've never really understood why our shot clock is 5 seconds less. So going to a 6-second less time than that. We talked with a Canadian coach, the FIBA rules. I think that's where she's trying to blend some of the FIBA rules in with what our rules are. And FIBA is the federation for the world, the basketball, World Basketball Organization. So we have the best basketball in the world. We win the most championships across the board, all age groups. And her point there is the FIBA rules are 10-second backcourt and a 24-second shot clock. Well, the Canadians play that way. Any team outside the United States plays that way if you're not affiliated with the NCAA. And in talking with some of those coaches, they think the game is much more exciting. It's fast-paced. It's, you can't... it's going to be a little bit of a change from a standpoint of, it takes the half-court game not totally away, but
you got to get into it.
It pushes the pace. It may make us a little more athletic. It may force changes in strategy. I think it'd be exciting to do something different, and I think that would be an exciting thing for a fan to watch. I think it'd be faster. This
one, I don't really get what difference it would make, but she threw out a bunch of different possible suggestions, and going to 4 10-minute quarters instead of 2 20-minute halves. What difference would that make?
Again, she comes from the WNBA, which they play quarters.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that would be a plus or a minus. I'm not sure how much of an effect that would have on our game. We see the timeouts, stopping play. I'm not sure on that if, going to a 4-quarter system would make that much of a difference. It may help the player a little bit. It may help the strategy a little bit. It may help with that going in correspondence with the shot clock reduction. That may be a better thing to do and not play 2 20-minute halves with that shortened shot clock. Gives, I think, coaches and teams might be able to catch their breath a little bit.
They have a little break there at the quarter. But we have an infinite number of media timeouts. Never-ending media timeouts. And don't blame the media for those.
No, we would never do that.
Why are they called the media timeout? Jim
sure.
and I, this is an Eckert thing, too. He gets so upset about that. Widening the lane.
Again, an international rule. That's the way the international players play. The international game is more shooting from the perimeter, wider. It creates more space. A wider lane creates more space, less physicality. We basically pound on each other and blame the officials that they don't call enough or they don't see enough. And that's a trickle-down effect. Again, I think when you're looking at the top levels, the international play, that's what they're doing. And I think that's where, she is saying that maybe we need to look at some of these things and become more unified. I mean, we are the best country for basketball across the board, men and women. We win the most championships internationally. Why are we not playing by those rules? Why do we have to continually make those adjustments when the entire world is playing by those rules?
I think that there's a simple suggestion that I would make, and I don't think you'll accuse me of being a sexist because I'm not. I'm just trying to be practical, and I hope that this doesn't upset you or fans listening. But I don't like the alternate year when they play the women at the end. And let me give you an example of why that is. It's not right what happens. Right. I wish that the fans would all come to the women's game. But when we went to Findlay this year, and that men's game was over, you had a parade of people leaving that arena, just en masse.
Yep.
Now, we used to go to Findlay, and by the second half of your game, it was packed, and it was electric, and the atmosphere was exciting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
people were coming.
absolutely.
Maybe they would say, hey, let's go watch the second half of the women's game, and we'll be there in time for the men's game. It just makes sense to me that you have a full arena, you have more excitement, and I hope we get to a point someday when it doesn't matter. And I really do, genuinely. But I felt like it was premature to do that. What do you think?
Absolutely. For the investigation to begin with, for us to be the only league in the country that does it, I think it was absolutely ludicrous. We had no complaints, and I don't know how entirely the whole situation started, but it did start with the high school, that group, of mothers that changed the high school seasons, and that's where someone questioned why we are the so-called JV game.
The JV game, right.
It's not the best for our players to watch people exit the gym when you can't. Sometimes it's difficult to watch 4 hours of basketball. But if you gave the case of the Findlay game, Findlay's women were an NCAA regional team. They won over 20 games. It wasn't that Findlay wasn't very good.
They had success.
Yes, but we each have our own fan base, and I think people have gotten used to, if they didn't get to our game right at 6 o'clock, they would come at 6:30, see most of our game, be there for the end, and then watch the men's game. And I think the OCR looked at that and said, well, that's not really right, and sided with the group that started the investigation in the first place, and our league really couldn't really do much about it. And again, it's basically you might say it's a Title IX situation where we would be looked upon, and I know there are people that are really in favor of us doing that, but for our players in the situation that we are, when we are playing doubleheaders, it's not the best for our kids. And
I bet it's different everywhere you go. I mean, you probably have some situations where there really isn't that much of a difference. And I've seen that at our place before where the crowds are about the same. That Findlay one was an example. Yeah, you probably were focused on coaching that day, but I was sort of like, man, what is going on? And it just feels like it would be better for everybody to leave it alone for a while. But I don't understand the full scope of what went into making that decision. And, I do want to be fair to the women's teams. That's really important to me, and it should be to everybody. Your teams play hard. They're really good. They play an entertaining brand of basketball. And when people give them a chance, my parents are a great example. They love to come to your games just like the men. They come to all of it. They just have a lot of fun. And so, I just want to see all of it continue to grow. And that's kind of, I think, what everybody wants to see. As far as Val Ackerman's suggestions, what's the timetable on those? I mean, does the NCAA have to vote to adopt some of that? And when do you think that might come up for a vote, for instance?
It'll be, in the distant future. I mean, she just released the white paper, I think the 15th of June, and obviously the Rules Committee will look at some of the suggestions. It has to go through championships, through all of the protocol that the NCAA has, and so it'll be, I would say at a minimum probably 3 or 4 years before you see any changes.
Do your kids really notice the crowd anyway, or are they so focused on what they're doing that it doesn't make a big difference? I
think we notice a crowd when it's rather large.
Right.
Like, for instance, when you go to Michigan Tech has a great basketball atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
Great basketball atmosphere. So over the years, we know we've actually enjoyed playing at Tech. The band gets into it, everybody gets into it. The fans are sitting, right behind you and hollering at you and saying things, although they're a lot nicer than they used to be. The band used to really let us have it. But, I think they enjoy the bigger crowds. So anytime we have a chance to, play up there or when we know there's a bigger crowd, I think they enjoy that.
Do your players follow the WNBA?
I don't know if they follow it as much as you would think. We'd like them to just follow basketball in general.
Okay.
So during the year, we have, we always ask questions. Hey, did you see this game? Did you see that game? And it's probably more on the men's side. We're always talking about, I always felt as a player that you had to watch the game to learn. And so I found it fascinating when you watch a Michael Jordan or you're watching someone perform on the court and you're kind of, whoever your idol might be or your favorite team might be, if you get really take a step back and really watch the game, it's fun to watch, and you can really learn from both an individual standpoint and from a team standpoint to see how teams play.
Let me ask you an NBA question. I know you didn't watch the Game 6 last night, but it was an incredible game. 5-point lead for the Spurs with 30 seconds left. Coach Popovich, who is widely regarded as one of the best coaches of all time. So for me to sit here and second guess him is ludicrous, but just for the sake of it's sports, right? We second guess coaches. You know what we're talking about. He takes out Parker and Duncan. They don't play the last 30 seconds, essentially. Chris Bosh gets an offensive rebound off a missed three with Duncan on the bench, kicks it out. Ray Allen drains a three. Did you take CZAT out with 30 seconds left of games? And just based on what you heard about that, what was your take on it?
It's funny you say that, because the game that probably sits with me the most is the regional game that we lost at Indianapolis when they made a 3, with time running out, and it was a miscommunication between Chelsea Harrison and Katie CZAT going over and through a screen. And so that situation's totally different. I mean, from what I understand, when we were talking about it this morning, they had a 5-point lead. Miami went small. He took Duncan out. I didn't know Parker was out.
Parker was out. He took him out a couple of times. He wasn't out the whole time, but
so he's going to be. I'm sure he's going to be questioned on, well, why did you do that? They went small, and I think San Antonio tried to compensate by going smaller. They give up an offensive rebound. He drains a 3. Everything bad that could happen happened. And you kind of feel as a coach almost to the point where you really can't control it. The players have to control it. And I watched that Allen replay, and holy smokes, did he get that off fast.
Jeez, I guess.
And he was, for him to make that shot, and I know they get paid to do it, but it was an incredible shot. But you knew if that game was going to be tied, going into overtime was not in San Antonio's favor.
Do you ever think that coaches try to almost get too cute or clever or try to outthink themselves? Yeah. I mean, in that situation, he was trying to do it for defensive purposes, but Duncan was playing out of his mind in that game with an incredible will to win that game. Yeah. And to have him on the bench at the ultimate moment, just as a basketball fan, I was shocked. I was like confused. Yeah. I'm not an expert on strategy, so I didn't understand why he was doing that. You watch so much film and you're so into your own head, I think, sometimes as a coach. Maybe sometimes you outthink yourself.
Yeah, and I think players have to make plays. I think you have to trust, you trust your players are going to make plays, but I would assume, he's going to second-guess himself about that move, but I would also assume that he's done it before. Yeah. In those situations. This is what we've done before. I'm not going to second-guess that decision, but he's going to be, I'm sure the media probably asked him that question more than once.
What do you do if you have a player, you mentioned that you'd watched the Tigers game today, and Jose Valverde, this game isn't on Jose Valverde, but he did give up 4 runs in the 9th inning. A lot of fans are frustrated with him. He seems to be completely mentally just out of it right now. Psychology is such a huge part of sports, being confident and secure in what you're trying to do. Have you ever had a player that just lost it mentally? Physically, they were fine, but mentally, they were struggling to find their place. And what do you do in that situation?
The only thing I think, and it happens all the time, obviously, not to that degree. Right. That situation's completely different, but you have players that don't make shots, or you have players that, don't defend, or you have players that have their weaknesses and all of a sudden they stick out, and they may not recognize it. You may take them off the floor and they don't really understand why, and then their confidence drops. And the psychological, the mental part of the game, to maintain that confidence is very difficult, because everybody's going to go through stretches where you're not going to perform at what you would think your best level is. The players that get in the zone, so to speak, when the game slows down and they're absolutely phenomenal, everything goes in, that happens once or twice a year if you're lucky, 4 or 5 times during a career if you're lucky, where everything is just perfect and you put up 40 or you get 25 rebounds, or in Katie CZAT's case, it happened more than, quite a bit, actually, and I think we were all spoiled by that. But, those situations are probably the most difficult, because you have to try to find someone that can do the job if your player's struggling, but yet you have to make sure that their confidence is still where it should be. And that's difficult, because that player really, they're the ones that can control their emotions and have to sit back and take a step back. And then you have to put the team first. And that's probably the most difficult thing to do. When you're running track, you're going against the clock.
Right.
If you score points for your team. If you do really well, you do really well for your team, but you're still going against the clock. In a basketball game, you're going against the other 5 players that are on the floor at the same time. The little tricks that they do on the floor and the things that we try to do on the floor, it is somewhat of a chess game, but there's 180 ways to skin a cat. So it's probably the most difficult thing, is to have a player be really, really confident in themselves no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's the science of the mental aspect of the game that I think, you know, we probably don't have enough training in, and we don't have enough resources to have someone, you know, like at the Division I schools, they probably have a psychological counselor.
Yeah, right.
You know, that they can go talk to. And, you know, that's their profession, and they help, you know, when you're stressed, because obviously the wins and losses fall back on the coaching staff. You know, the players are trying to do their best, and sometimes it's just not enough.
When I was coaching football, we won a huge game over Litchfield, and we're in the weight room, the coaches and I celebrating and watching film, and I had a player that came over and wanted to talk to me, and he was really upset because he hadn't played a lot in that game, and it was a close game, and you know, that dynamic of making the team the most important thing, but also understanding that you care about these kids individually too. I would imagine that can be, and it probably isn't the same way every year, but that could be one of the most challenging things in coaching.
I think it is, because, you know, to give an example, in our game, you know, we play the game, our locker room's at the end of the gym, we go in the locker room, we come back out, and then there are the parents. And at the college level, you know, we talk to our players about, we're not going to discuss playing time with parents, but sure enough, you can certainly tell if a player didn't play, or, you know, we won the game, when you're happy and everything's good, and then you can just sense it. And I think that's the most difficult probably situation you can deal with, because you don't want your players or your parents taking an individual situation over the team, but however, that's their daughter or son, or, you know, whatever the situation may be, and they didn't particularly play well that day, or they didn't play very much that day, or they didn't get in the game that day. And, you know, that's where parents and fans sometimes don't see the practices and what builds up to that decision of how much you're going to play, you know, and what leads into that situation. It's not all about what happens in that 20 minutes or 40 minutes.
You know, as a parent of an athlete, even though he's just 10, he's in a lot of sports, and what I find is parents of kids who play sports are not rational human beings. You really do lose sight of the big picture, and as a former coach and a person who's covered sports my whole life, you would think I'd have a better handle on this, but I can even see my wife and I falling into that.
Yeah.
You care about your kid and their self-esteem or how they're feeling, and you want them to find success and to be happy. And, you know, I think parents are not the right people to talk to, because they don't see the big picture.
Right. I go back to, you know, when we won the championship, and we had a point guard by the name of Brooke Knight from St. John's. And I use her as an example because her parents, if she was good or if she was bad, whether we won or whether we lost, her parents were the same. If she didn't play well, her dad probably told her. You know, it was a very honest situation. It was never, you know, she was very hard on herself, probably too hard on herself. Was a very, very good player for us. You know, obviously led our team as a point guard to a championship. But her parents, I would have to say, were the example of never interfering. They never, you know, they never questioned. They never said anything or acted in any way that they would question anything that we did. And, you know, and I think Brooke was a true reflection of that, because she was very, very hard on herself. But, you know, the kid was in the gym every single day, working on her game all the time, and, you know, had a 3.8 GPA. So something went right in that household. And I think sometimes we can lose sight of really the big picture. And I think when we get narrow vision, and, you know, on that particular day, you know, our son or daughter didn't play really that well, that's not really what it's all about. It's what are they doing that entire week before, month before? How are they preparing? You know, it's not going to be your day every day. It's not going to be, you know, but are you preparing to make a difference? And I use Brooke Borowski in that situation. She didn't play hardly at all last year, you know, as a freshman. She got hurt. She had a back injury. She tried to fight through it. So this year we were at Michigan Tech, kind of was her, I would say, coming out party. I mean, she just she lit it up. She kept our team in it. She came in off the bench. She really didn't have that much experience, and all of a sudden you could just see it, and she kept our team in the game for a long, long time. And throughout the year, she did that. So going into this year, her role is probably going to be, she was one player that pretty much had a lot of confidence in herself and just put forth a lot of effort because she really didn't defend very well last year. She couldn't move very well, and then in the beginning of the year, it was hard for her. But then you could see progress every day. You could see that mental toughness get better and better and better every day. And then finally, when she had the opportunity, she made the best of it.
Claudette Charney is the all-time winningest coach in GLIAC basketball. She is going to be going, I believe, into her 12th year at Hillsdale College.
Yeah, I think so.
And has over 500 career wins. Normally, our interview portion of the program goes for 20 minutes. We're working on 40 right now with Coach Charney. And I want to we'll talk about the camp again before you go, but okay. I want to get you out of here on this. You've really done it all. You've won a league title. You've won a GLIAC tournament. Obviously, you're the all-time winningest coach in the conference. You have done it all from a coaching standpoint at this level. What fuels your fire right now? What keeps you going strong as you kind of work through getting ready for another season? What are your goals? What do you still want to accomplish in coaching?
A national championship. There's no question. Mm-hmm. Whether it'll happen or not, who knows? I go back to Katie Czat's senior year when we lost that game in Indianapolis. I thought up to that point that was the best team I'd ever had, and we've had some good ones. When I was at Saginaw Valley, we were an NAIA school at the time, and we ended up 5th in the nation at the national tournament, and we lost to a really good team out of Louisiana. And ever since that point, the game is fascinating to me. It's ever changing. It changes every day. It's the fans see it one way, we see it another sometimes, but the game has changed a tremendous amount, as well as the athletes, and the generations have changed. How athletes get to our level now is recruiting is a lot different than it was. When I was at Saginaw and we had a change in presidents, and Dr. Gilbertson, who's still there, came into our athletic meeting and said, we were going to go to Division III, and we were a Division II school, and he made one point that has stuck with me ever since then. He felt that Division II tried to emulate Division I too much. And, when our athletic director heard him say that, of course it never happened, but that point stuck with me, and we need to have, the men's game has to have their own identity. We need to have an identity. Division I has their identity and their resources, more scholarships, more money. Mm-hmm. But this level is the true balance between being a student, which is really what it's all about, growing and persevering and learning life lessons and getting better, by the time they graduate, turning into, an improved person mm-hmm. overall, becoming a better writer in school and communicator. And then you see the leadership evolving, you see the personalities evolving, you see the growth in people, and I think that's what my passion is to see that development continue and to try to reach a potential, both from an individual standpoint and from a team standpoint.
Claudette Charney is the head coach of the women's basketball team at Hillsdale College, and you guys have a camp coming up. We started with this. I want to end with it. Mm-hmm. 607 3152, mm-hmm. and it's coming up Thursday, June 27th through Saturday, the 29th. Again, 607-3152. You're going to be working with one of the best coaches anywhere, and just a lot of kids who love basketball and coaches who are dedicated to the sport. Take me through a little bit of what the kids can expect. What kind of fun things do you do with them during the camp?
Well, first of all, our players, or most of our players, will be back, and it's a small camp. It's not a large camp. The academy has been gracious enough to allow us to use their facility, and I think they'll get an individual. They'll get a lot of individual work with an individual person. It's not 25 kids and one camp counselor. It'll be 3 kids and 1 player, 4 kids and 1 player, and we'll go through obviously the skills, but they'll play games, and we've divided the age groups up. So the younger kids are coming in the morning. The older kids, the middle school age kids will come in the afternoon, And, we'd like to see it. This year we've kind of taken a hit because we've got started, late with the renovation and not knowing what we were going to do. So we got on board a little bit late. So, we'll take registrations up to the minute that we start. But it's a fun. We want to make it fun for anybody that comes, and it's not very expensive. I think the cost is $50, and you'll get a T-shirt and the best experience with our players who are great teachers and great people.
Well, this is one of the longest interviews we've ever had, and you are always welcome to come back. If you're going to come in and talk sports, you've got a room. You've got a seat in this room anytime you want. Really exciting camp opportunity for the kids coming up Thursday, the 27th, through Saturday, the 29th. You won't be sorry. If you take your kid to this, you will not be sorry. And for more information, you can call 607-3152. Coach Charney, enjoy your summer. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much. We'll bring in Rick. We're going to bemoan another Tigers loss after this break.